In 1986, the entire facility was demolished. The official report lists structural instability due to water damage, but locals near Dayton still speak of fog rising some nights, not over the ground, but from within the glass of old shop windows. Those who claim to have seen it describe faint silhouettes moving just a half-second too slow. At 0311 H's, thermal imaging confirmed motion around the crash perimeter. Not human, but cold signatures, colder than the surrounding air. They moved irregularly, in arcs and spirals, like drifting smoke with intent. Sergeant Danner, on exterior watch, described seeing a shimmer in the fog that bends around the beam of my flashlight. His camera captured nothing but white static. Yet his mic picked up what analysts later identified as breathing, slow, rhythmic, coming from every direction at once. By 0319 H's, power to all mobile command units failed simultaneously. Analog equipment continued running for 12 seconds longer. Enough time for the field recorder to document a sound none of the team could explain. A metallic dragging, as if something heavy and hollow was being pulled through the soil beneath them. The noise stopped directly under Tent 3. Moments later, Private Hensley reported a vibration. Under the floor, grid, when they lifted the canvas, they found a shallow depression in the ground. Smooth, circular, with no tool marks. Its center emitted a faint low-frequency hum. Radio traffic from HQ. Do not engage. Secure perimeter. Await aerial recon. The fog thickened. Visibility dropped to 0 within minutes. Voices on the comm began duplicating. Each command repeated half a second later. Same tone, same inflection, but slightly distorted. One soldier asked who else was on Channel 3. No one replied. At 0327 HRs, the hum deepened, vibrating through the soil. Multiple personnel complained of headaches, nausea, and hearing their own voices from inside their helmets. Danner's final log entry read, "It's below us. It's copying." Static overtook the transmission. At sunrise, only 4 of the 14 ground crew remained. Their watches were synchronized perfectly, but the timestamps on each recorder showed different dates. When questioned, survivors described identical hallucinations, faces forming in fog, whispering coordinates they couldn't write down. One officer muttered a word repeatedly until sedated. Mirrorlight. Base Command labeled the incident. Classified anomaly, Type 7. Non-biological mimetic presence, and ordered immediate site sterilization. The soil depression was filled and sealed with reinforced plating. All equipment was confiscated and stored under Wright-Patterson Hangar 18, later marked Project Mirrorlight Phase 0. But no people. One operative reportedly whispered, "They've taken our image." He vanished moments later. Only his headset remained, the ear cups filled with condensation. The final radio log captured a faint voice, repeating the project's designation, syllable by syllable, slower each time, until the last transmission stopped mid-word. Mirror, light, mirror, light. Silence for 6 minutes. Then one final tone, steady, piercing, endless, recovered. Fragments from the Mirrorlight. Operation were never officially cataloged. The file was sealed under Project Solstice, buried beneath atmospheric research data. But fragmentary logs recovered from a corrupted drive in 1991 provide the last known transmission before the blackout. 0219 HERS. The time had never changed. Multiple feeds across the base went dark, replaced by looping reflections of the same hallway, filmed from impossible angles, corners that didn't exist. Lights flickering at frequencies too high for human eyes. One frame showed a soldier standing at attention, unmoving. Behind him in the reflection, his mirrored self turned slowly, looking directly into the camera. Then every light in the base died at once. Witnesses and 3 civilians in a nearby township reported a brief dome of pale light, expanding from Wright-Patterson, that folded in on itself silently, leaving no explosion, no debris. The facility's power grid rebooted 12 minutes later, but all 42 personnel on duty were gone. No remains, no heat signatures, only empty uniforms found arranged in neat mirror-facing pairs. When investigators replayed the security footage recovered from the night before, the files showed something impossible. Identical timestamps layered atop each other. 2 realities recorded at once, one normal, one reversed. In the reversed version, the staff moved backward, mouths opening and closing in perfect silence. In the final frame, the reversed version turned toward the normal one and raised their hands. That was the last recorded second before total black. The remaining analysts determined Mirrorlight had reached complete inversion threshold. In plain terms, the reflected entities no longer needed mirrors. They existed independently, indistinguishable from their originals. In the following months, civilian databases reported a pattern of missing persons, whose last known photographs contained visual anomalies, off-centered pupils, double shadows, or faint condensation rings along the edges of the print. Each had one thing in common: their reflections never reappeared in mirrors. A suppressed memo from Colonel Mason's desk, time-stamped hours before his disappearance, contained a single handwritten line. They learned to copy the light. Next, they'll copy the source. No further transmissions were received after March 4th. The building was sealed. Mirrors were removed. Surveillance was banned within a 2-mile radius. Impossible. The security tapes from that night recorded 19 hours of footage, even though only 4 hours had passed. During the missing time, the frames showed empty hallways, except for brief flashes of faces pressed against the glass from the inside of the monitors. The final classified addendum to File 10 reads, "Containment has failed. The phenomenon is no longer external. It exists in recorded light, in mirrored surfaces, in digital reflections. Every image now has depth." The contagion of reflection had reached the populated zones. City surveillance cameras began to malfunction at identical intervals, 0:20 every night, freezing frames for 6 seconds before resuming. In each frozen frame, investigators noticed small inconsistencies. Street signs reversed, shadows angled the wrong way, and in several clips, people staring directly into the lens who were never present in real life. Broadcast technicians from WKYN Channel 9 logged the first mass incident during a live weather update. At exactly 02:19, the presenter froze mid-sentence. The screen flickered, once, and a perfect copy of the studio appeared behind him, except the reflection of the presenter in the monitor kept speaking, while the real one stood still. The reflection whispered, "We're back where it started." The signal was terminated instantly. Viewers across 4 states reported the same brief static, pulsed through their televisions, 6 seconds long, with faint whispering beneath it. Spectrogram analysis later revealed those whispers were human words, reversed and layered. Observe the observer. At dawn, military personnel secured the WKYN building under the guise of a radiation leak. The studio equipment was dismantled and transported to Wright-Patterson. Every staff member who had witnessed the broadcast failed to recognize themselves in identification photos taken later that day. One anchor refused to look in mirrors, saying the reflection blinked too early. By February 22nd, the phenomenon entered what the report called echo phase. Reflections no longer required physical surfaces. They appeared in sound, light, and even memory. Phone operators in Cincinnati described hearing their own voices, answering calls seconds before picking up the receiver. Children reported seeing faces floating inside television static, whispering names they didn't know. A classified field memo from Colonel Mason, head of remaining Mirrorlight containment, summarized the situation with unnerving precision. "It's not expanding outward anymore. It's folding inward. The world isn't reflecting the entity. The entity is reflecting us. Every recorded image, every mirror, every digital feed is a window looking both ways." At 02:19 HRs on February 23rd, every mirrored surface in the Hamilton County Command Center spontaneously fogged from the inside. Personnel wiped them clear, only to find no reflection staring back. The glass showed the room, the walls, the lights. Afterward, the entire Clinton County operation was erased from military records. Weather data for that night was retroactively corrected to indicate clear skies. Still, for 3 consecutive nights after, shortwave radios across Ohio carried the same recurring message, whispered in a dozen overlapping voices. Observation complete. Phase 3 begins. The Mirrorlight phenomenon was no longer localized. Satellite reconnaissance confirmed heat distortions stretching from Dayton to the Ohio River, a single, expanding field that appeared to breathe. Each expansion cycle matched a new 37-day interval, as if the original pulse had evolved into a living rhythm. At 01:58 HRs, an unmarked convoy from the Defense Intelligence Network arrived at a decommissioned missile silo near Trenton, Ohio. Their mission: initiate containment protocol Theta using deep bore. EMP detonations designed to collapse the anomaly's core frequency. 12 personnel entered the silo. Only one transmission was ever received from inside. We're not underground. We're inside it. At 0206 HRs, the blast was triggered. Instruments recorded 0 detonation. No shockwave, no heat bloom, just a momentary void. For 8 seconds, all electronic systems across Butler County stopped, even battery watches. When systems reactivated, the silo was gone. Not destroyed, gone. The ground above it was smooth, fused glass, as though the landscape itself had been rewritten. Infrared scans taken minutes, later revealed shadows, without bodies moving in circular motion, across the glassed surface. Each silhouette measured precisely the height and posture of the missing personnel. They walked endlessly in silence, looping the perimeter, fading with the sunrise. Meanwhile, the command post 20 miles away began receiving reports from civilians. Missing relatives appearing at their doorsteps, standing still, expressionless, staring through windows without speaking. Each vanished when touched. The temperature at those locations dropped instantly to 0 degrees C. An intercepted internal memo from Project Oversight dated February 4th reads, "The field has learned mimicry beyond reflection. Thought patterns bleed through the signal. It anticipates command. Every attempt to observe accelerates replication. The fog is now aware it is being watched." At 0219 HRs that same night, Mirrorlight Central, data server at Wright-Patterson, triggered a spontaneous reboot. Every monitor displayed a single sentence, white text on black background. Phase 3 complete, initiating return. Then, every light in the complex shut off. When power was restored, over 70% of the staff were missing. Their ID cards were found stacked neatly on the main console, arranged in a spiral. Local residents later described hearing distant hums, coming from the direction of the base, synchronized with faint blue flashes that lit the clouds, though the sky remained perfectly clear. A later audit discovered something. The final entry in the Mirrorlight lab notes reads, "Echo bleed has entered transmission phase. Containment impossible. The phenomenon is now self-replicating through observation." At 02 Azru, ours, a military weather surveillance station near Port William, detected a pulse unlike any previous Mirrorlight activity, longer, lower, resonating for nearly 30 seconds. Instruments registered simultaneous fluctuations across thermal, seismic, and magnetic spectrums. The air pressure dropped to 0 for a full half-second. Then silence. At 0201 HRs, all lights within a 20-mile radius went dark. Witnesses later described it as the night folding inward. Livestock froze, mid-motion. Mechanical clocks reversed for one rotation before stopping altogether. At 0202 HRs, the fog arrived. Not rolling, descending as if poured from above. The layer was thick, blue-gray, and faintly luminescent from within. Soldiers stationed along the perimeter reported hearing movement, though nothing visible approached. One guard stated it sounded like breathing, but the rhythm matched mine. The surveillance building's black box recorder documented 11 minutes of audio before failure. Analysts later reconstructed fragments of that log. The voices captured inside belonged to both the living team and their duplicates. "Command, this is Bravo Unit." Interference. "Copy that. Bravo Unit already inside perimeter." "Negative. We are outside. Repeat outside." "Then who's—" Signal collapse. At 0210 HRs, motion sensors identified multiple human-shaped heat signatures converging on the facility from every direction, yet each one mirrored a real, breathing soldier positioned in the same stance hundreds of meters away. Thermal analysis confirmed it. One-to-one reflections, perfectly synchronized except for a half-second delay. The reflections advanced. The originals froze. Eyewitnesses later testified that the doubles did not move through terrain, but around it, bending geometry like reflections sliding across broken mirrors. When they reached the facility, all power ceased. The feed ended there. At sunrise, the fog lifted. The building stood empty. All 22 personnel were missing. No struggle, no bodies. Only uniforms neatly folded near the entrance. Badges turned upside down. Drone footage taken at 0745 HRs revealed a massive imprint surrounding the base, a perfect ellipse, extending over 2 miles long. Within the shape, vegetation had been bleached white, and a faint symbol was visible from above, identical to the Mirrorlight project insignia. But the project's own archives show that insignia had been retired months before. No operative on site should have recognized it. The lead investigator on the recovery team, Lieutenant Commander Avery, filed his report in handwriting that degraded progressively down the page. His last legible line read, "They're not reflections anymore. We're the reflections." The first signs of echo bleed appeared shortly after the Jackson Township incident. Civilian communication frequencies across southwestern Ohio began carrying faint overlays, voices, repeating delayed transmissions. From earlier days, broadcast engineers traced the distortion to no single source. Rather, the interference seemed to arise inside existing signals, as though the air itself had learned to transmit memory. A surveillance unit stationed near Lebanon, Ohio, picked up one such echo at 02:19 hours, the same timestamp as every major Mirrorlight pulse. The voice on the recording was unmistakable. Captain Ronald Meyer, the pilot lost over Dayton nearly 3 months prior. He spoke calmly, repeating coordinates that no longer existed on military maps. "We are inside the fog now. There's sky beneath us. Don't look for the ground, it's looking back." Analysts confirmed the signals. Frequency matched Meyer's last transmission from October 21st, 1981, but this wasn't a replay in the tone. Modulation reflected live atmospheric interference, suggesting the voice originated in real time. At 03:07 HRs, local weather satellites recorded a circular cloud formation over the same coordinates, rotating counter to natural wind direction. Lightning illuminated something beneath it, not metal, not craft, but a dome of vaporous light. Expanding, contracting, breathing. Minutes later, radio chatter from 2 nearby. National Guard posts captured fragments of conversation never transmitted from their own units. Visual anomaly confirmed. Not aircraft. Not biological. It knows the order of our words before we say them. Ground teams dispatched to investigate reached the perimeter by 03:42 Hz. They reported no storm activity, no visible cloud cover, yet their vehicle dashboards displayed heavy rainfall readings and condensation forming inside the glass. Sergeant Hale, lead investigator, described seeing a shimmer in the headlights followed by what looked like footprints in reverse, impressions rising out of the mud, forming as if someone were walking backward out of unseen ground. Then, the repeating hum, louder than ever before. Hale's radio began replaying his own voice from 5 minutes earlier, answering questions he hadn't yet been asked. "You're already here," the echo said. When the pulse ended, the fog dissipated, leaving a patch of scorched earth perfectly circular, exactly 1 mile in diameter. Soil analysis confirmed the same magnetized residue first documented near Dayton, except this sample pulsed faintly when exposed to infrared light, as though the dirt itself retained electrical memory. Within 48 hours, residents within a 10-mile radius reported identical dreams, walking through mist, hearing their own names whispered from within the fog. All audio records, soil samples, and radar logs were seized by Department of Defense couriers on January 6, 1982. Every witness signed a silence order. Infrared footage recovered from a classified thermal drone, designation Spectre 2, revealed signs of subsurface heat, displacement beneath an abandoned water treatment facility, 20 miles south of Dayton. The readings matched the same rhythmic intervals noted during the Fayette containment breach, 1 pulse every 37 days. Drone operators confirmed the site had been decommissioned since 1976. Yet the surveillance feed showed movement, silhouettes, human-sized, pacing within sealed concrete corridors where no access points existed. Analyst remarks noted that the shapes mimicked observer motion. When the drone camera rotated left, the figures rotated right, as if mirroring the operator through the feed itself. At 02:11 hours, the camera feed glitched. Temperature spiked from 12 degrees C to 81 degrees C in under 3 seconds. Then came the tone. That same 6-second hum first recorded over Dayton. Except this time, it originated from beneath the concrete. A low-frequency resonance followed, so deep it caused temporary loss of telemetry. The video resumed only once the drone had climbed above 400 feet. The silhouettes were gone. But the floor below now displayed circular burn marks, identical to those found in the cornfields. Concentric, precise expanding. 2 hours later, a ground inspection team entered the site. What they found was documented in a classified debrief. The tunnels are warm to the touch. Concrete sweating condensation despite sub-zero temperatures. Flashlights flicker when aimed down the corridor. At intervals, faint echoes of human footsteps, delayed, repeating our own. Unnerving symmetry. At Oro 3, Oro 2 Hers, one of the inspectors, Lieutenant Barnes, reported seeing a reflection of himself at the end of the corridor, standing, motionless, eyes open, mouth moving, but producing no sound. He approached. The reflection stepped forward simultaneously. Then the temperature in the room dropped 15 degrees instantly. His partner described a static burst, followed by complete darkness. When lights returned, Barnes was gone. Only his helmet remained, visor cracked from the inside out. The walls of the tunnel bore prints, dozens of palm impressions pressed into the concrete, still radiating faint heat signatures. The impressions matched the hands of missing personnel from prior Mirrorlight incidents. When Command reviewed the footage from Spectre 2, they noticed something impossible. Barnes' thermal outline continued pacing the corridor, looping endlessly every 11 seconds, though no body had ever been recovered. That feed was later sealed under Defense Intelligence Directive 892B, marked non-human cognitive artifact. 2 weeks later, local residents reported strange, flickering lights reflected in the frozen river near Jackson. When investigators checked, they found no source, only the reflection of moving figures where no one stood. At ZO 152 Hers, a civil defense operator, identified as Agent L. Monroe, received a scrambled burst across an emergency weather band. The frequency carried no ID code, no registered origin point. It repeated a single message 5 times before fragmenting into white noise. They brought something back. The following 72 hours saw a complete communications blackout across 3 counties. Military radar arrays in southern Ohio began registering inverted returns, reflections that appeared beneath the ground rather than above it. At 0309 Hers, a technician from Chillicothe logged seismic tremors synchronized with faint electromagnetic surges. The readings repeated every 37 days, matching the original Mirrorlight signature. But this time, the pulse was inverted. Negative frequency, subharmonic, impossible under standard radio parameters. Declassified satellite images later revealed faint, concentric depressions spreading outward from the original Dayton coordinates, like ripples, like something underneath was expanding. A recovered report from Dr. Crane's assistant, filed 1 week before the Fayette disappearance, contained a chilling note. The entity is not singular. It's refracted consciousness, a mirror fragment that remembers being observed. The more attention we give it, the more solid it becomes. At 0427 Hers, a patrol unit dispatched from nearby Hillsborough to inspect a suspected downed aircraft failed to respond. When contact resumed at dawn, the responding sergeant's voice was calm but distorted, repeating short phrases that didn't fit context. "We've been here before. Light under the soil. I saw myself walking back to the truck." The sergeant was later hospitalized for acute catatonia. His uniform smelled of ozone. His boots were caked in a fine metallic dust that caused compasses to spin erratically. Within 5 feet, the dust was analyzed at Wright-Patterson, classified as unknown compound, non-terrestrial origin. At noon the same day, nearby farmers reported shadows crossing their barns, though the sky was cloudless. One described it as fog that knew where it wanted to go. Officially, civil defense attributed the entire event to ionospheric interference and malfunctioning weather telemetry. All operators were instructed to purge local archives. Monroe, the first to intercept the phrase, "They brought something back," resigned within 48 hours and left no forwarding address. The logbook recovered from his desk contained only a single handwritten sentence beneath the timestamp, 309 Hers. "It's not coming from the sky anymore." 3 weeks after Harker's disappearance, an unmarked convoy entered a stretch of farmland off Route 35 under the pretext of a communication survey. Locals later recalled the trucks, matte black, no insignia, license plates removed. By dawn, an entire grid of the area was cordoned off. Inside those coordinates, a temporary base was established, 5 sensor towers, a mobile operations unit, and a single quarantine tent surrounded by floodlights. The purpose, to capture the light entity previously observed over Dayton and Greene County. The team was led by Dr. Ellis Crane, a physicist under contract from the Defense Advanced Research Projects Division. His memo, marked "Eyes Only," was later discovered in a mislabeled microfilm reel. The anomaly does not radiate heat. It bends light around itself, like glass submerged in water. When we approach within 20 meters, the human voice begins to echo in triplicate, 1 forward, one reversed, and one that speaks words we did not say. At ZO214 HRs, all monitoring towers simultaneously recorded the onset of the tone, 6 seconds of piercing, frequency identical to the original Dayton signal. The field filled with dense fog, windless and self-contained. Visibility dropped to 0. Inside the tent, one of the soldiers reported motion near the containment grid. Crane ordered all power rerouted to the perimeter lights. The bulbs flickered once, then burst. Every single floodlight exploding inward, not outward. As if the vacuum itself had pulled the glass from within. Radio logs captured overlapping voices. One transmission reads, "We see movement in the fog. Looks human. Wait. Copy that. It's us." Thermal sensors confirmed 12 heat signatures inside the mist. But the crew on site only counted 6 people present. Dr. Crane attempted direct communication using a low-frequency pulse. The fog pulsed back. For several seconds, every metallic surface within 50 meters began vibrating, creating harmonic resonance. The men reported severe pressure headaches and nosebleeds. Then, sudden silence. At O219 HRs, half the personnel vanished from radar. The remaining team recovered only their earpieces and partially melted sidearms, fused into the soil in identical patterns. Crane's final note before blackout reads, "Entity mirrors command structure. Knows our voices. Knows our names. Observation has reversed." By sunrise, the fog cleared. The tent was empty. No convoy was ever logged entering or leaving Fayette County that night. Residents who inquired were told the survey team belonged to the Department of Agriculture. Weeks later, a low hum began returning across shortwave frequencies within a 50-mile radius, always at O219 HRs. The investigation into the Dayton anomaly had quietly expanded by early November. No public acknowledgement, no press coverage, only a handful of operatives under the project name. Mirrorlight were authorized to enter the site. Among them was specialist Daniel Harker, an electromagnetic technician from Wright-Patterson, brought in to install motion-triggered recording equipment across the cornfield perimeter. His written field notes were recovered from his locker 2 weeks later. The last entry dated November 4th. Fog returned before dusk. Equipment malfunctioned again. Static pulse every 7 minutes. Feels like pressure behind the ears when it happens. Not sure if that's the air or something else. At 2217 HRs, Harker radioed, "Command that one of his sensors detected movement. 3 meters above ground, slow circling." He requested permission to approach. Command approved a visual check. The audio transcript captures footsteps in wet soil. The faint hum of his gear, then Harker whispering, "There's light inside the mist. Not shining, glowing. It's breathing." A low resonance follows, subsonic, powerful enough to cause distortion across all monitoring frequencies. Then his voice panicked. "It's copying me. Every movement. Half a second after I do it, like reflection, but delayed." The team monitoring from the mobile van tried to respond, but all transmissions jammed. The interference wasn't random. It mirrored their own encrypted channel, repeating commands before they spoke them. The last thing Harker transmitted was faint but clear. "It's close now. If it's me, then who's holding the light?" At 2243 HRIs, his radio cut to continuous static. Search teams found his equipment the next morning. Tripod standing upright. Recorder active. Microphone pointed toward a shallow indentation in the soil. No sign of struggle. No tracks leading in or out. Just circular burn marks in the frost, each one perfectly aligned, forming a spiral pattern converging at the spot where Harker vanished. When analyzed, the audio device still emitted a pulse. Every 37 days, synchronized to the same timestamp as the original. Dayton transmission. The official Mirrorlight summary listed the event as equipment failure, personnel misplacement. But a handwritten note in the margin, unsigned, read, "Mirror replication complete. Observation successful. Recommend containment." The following recording was discovered on a damaged cassette inside an abandoned pickup near the site of the Dayton disappearance. The truck belonged to Raymond Carter, a farmer who lived less than 5 miles from the original radar anomaly. The tape begins with the sound of crickets, then a faint mechanical hum, rhythmic, like a slow heartbeat. Carter's voice. "It's back again. Blue light above the silo. Not moving. The cows are restless. Power's been flickering all night." He coughs, moves closer to the door, the hinge creaking. The recorder picks up a low rumble. Metallic. Deep, not from any engine known to the area. Then faintly, a whispering frequency overlaps the static. repeating a single word, return. A second voice, young, possibly his nephew, is heard whispering, "Uncle Ray, it's behind the barn." At that moment, the recording spikes with distortion. An object, described later by investigators as bioluminescent mist, crosses the field, rising and folding like a curtain caught in invisible wind. Livestock panic. You can hear hooves thundering, a gate breaking. Carter shouts, "Get in the truck!" Then the hum intensifies. The boy screams. The tape cuts to silence for 12 full seconds. When audio returns, Carter's breathing is ragged. He mutters, "It's watching me through the fog. I can see shapes, but not people. Lights inside the air." A sudden thud. The sound of metal bending. Then static again. The final 4 seconds capture a distorted voice. Feminine. Mechanical and repeating, observation complete. The recorder stops. 2 days later, state police found the pickup engine melted into the soil. No trace of Carter or his nephew. The corn around the vehicle was flattened in a perfect 60-foot circle. The stalks fused at the tips like glass. The Department of Energy later denied any involvement, claiming no experimental aircraft or radiation tests took place in the area. But soil readings in the circle showed magnetized, residue consistent with high frequency, electromagnetic exposure, far above any known civilian threshold. Local radio enthusiasts claimed that, for weeks after the incident, they could hear the same 6-second tone bleed into police scanners between midnight and 3 a.m. The first transmission came through an Air Force frequency that officially had been dormant since 1979. A sharp tone, 6 seconds of high-pitched static, followed by a woman's voice repeating, "North of the field. They're not supposed to be here." Then silence. For the next 40 minutes, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base scrambled 2 UH-1 helicopters and a ground unit to investigate what radar, described as unidentified stationary returns, over a rural stretch of cornfields east of Dayton. The weather was calm. No storm activity. Yet the pilots reported dense fog forming from nowhere, a rolling blanket of gray that blocked their infrared scopes. One of the pilots, Captain Ronald Meyer, later recorded in his personal log, "Fog thick as paint, not on radar. Smells metallic. Something's moving beneath it, slow, deliberate. Lights are wrong. They're inside the mist." Locals still recall that night as the silent storm. Dogs went missing. Power flickered for miles. The emergency operator lines overloaded with reports of hum, vibrations shaking windows. An electrician named Charles Doran, working a late shift by Route 4, described seeing what he thought was a downed aircraft, glowing faintly blue in the cornfield. When he approached within 50 yards, he said the air hummed like live wires, and his flashlight went dead. The blue glow retracted, folding inward, as though being pulled into itself, leaving only scorched soil and concentric rings burned into the frost. At 0412 HR's Myers helicopter disappeared from radar. Radio logs captured a final broken message. "Not mechanical, movement is intelligent. It's looking." End of transmission. The second helicopter found nothing but swirling mist and an unnatural magnetic reading that spiked instruments beyond calibration. When the fog cleared at dawn, only the rotor assembly from Myers' craft was found, the metal warped inward, as though it had been melted and then reshaped by a force that ignored physics. The Air Force sealed the site by sunrise. Locals were told a chemical spill had occurred, and contaminated ground required decontamination procedures. No photographs were released. Families of the pilots received sealed caskets and non-disclosure agreements. Years later, an internal report surfaced under the code Project Mirrorlight. It noted recurring electromagnetic anomalies in the same coordinates every 37 days. When investigators tried to reopen the file in 1988, the case index was gone, deleted from every record. Even the archived paper copies were marked